Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It is the Monday show with me, Andrew Musgrove, and the Newcastle United editor of Chronicle Live, Aaron Stokes. We're back in the studio, back in person. Aaron, you keeping well?
I am, yeah, very well. What about yourself? How's parenthood treating you?
It's doing all right. It is the best thing in the world. It obviously changes your life completely, but she's a little bundle of joy. She's already been behind the mic or in front of the mic, putting you to shame with her opinions. I mean, she can't speak, but
Already better than me. I did wake up Sunday morning, and the first thing I saw was you just absolutely ending it on Facebook with that comment. So thanks for that. But yeah,
very witty, I thought, very clever.
well.
But yeah, it is. It's the best thing. And thank you to everyone who's passed on their wishes, and they are much appreciated by myself and my wife, and of course our little baby girl. But football doesn't stop. Newcastle United, of course, goes on. And the good thing about being a new father this time, I did manage to catch quite a bit of the pre-season. In fact, and I mentioned this on the Let's Talk About episode with John Gibson, which was all about Elliot Anderson. I actually woke up to feed Harriet with 10 minutes remaining of the game against Brighton. And that's all I needed to see, wasn't it? The two goals from Elliot Anderson. So perfect timing. Plenty to take away from the tour of the United States. Of course, our colleague Lee Ryder was over there covering the tour with Newcastle United. But we're going to start with the big news over the weekend. The news that we knew was coming, and it was Allan Saint-Maximin leaving Newcastle United to join Al Hilal in the Saudi Pro League. £25 million or so. As I say, we knew it was coming. It's not a shock. I have to say, though, the way it's going on, it's like he's died.
See, it's interesting, isn't it? Because out of the two of us, you're the new father. You're meant to be all, optimistic and sentimental these days. And actually, we've been having a discussion about it in the office today. I'm the one that's actually feeling a little bit sad about Maxi going. And if I'm honest, I didn't actually feel like that when the news first came about that he was going to go. I thought it makes sense. I think, as I've talked about on this pod and on the Chronicle, I think Barnes is an upgrade. I don't know, there was just something about seeing those goodbye messages, seeing the fans flooding in on Twitter that made me think, actually, he's been a very good servant and he gets the fans. And I think I am a little bit gutted now. More gutted than I was last week.
I wasn't moved. I wasn't moved at all.
But why though? What makes you say that? Like, should we not give this guy a good send-off?
No, we give Allan Saint-Maximin a good send-off. We say thank you very much for being the light in those dark days. But like I said, it is like he's died. So yeah, I've seen those comments. It's like, goodness me, he's just moving on. We all knew this point was coming, and the very fact that everyone always harks back to how he destroyed Kyle Walker on that day, but that's the only thing they point to. For me, it's just the right move for everybody, and I think it's quite telling as well. Why haven't any Premier League sides coming from? Yes, maybe because they'd have to pay double what the Saudi Pro League paid, but at the same time, if he was as good as many people think he is, surely a Spurs, surely a team maybe just below Newcastle, Brentford perhaps, would have got him with a cheeky bid and tried to persuade him to move to Brentford, for example.
Yeah, look, as we've touched on before, we touched on it last week. I've done countless videos about it in the last couple of weeks. There is this little bit of sort of, Maxi sort of carries this aura about him, doesn't he? And I think if you just look purely at the stats of what he's done for Newcastle, it's a no-brainer to sell him on. But I don't know, there's just something about him with the fans that what's the right word? Is his ability inflated? Is it sort of more than what it actually is? I think maybe that's the case. I don't think he's actually as good as everyone's making him out to be. But that's not to deny he's given us some fantastic times. And yes, it's the right deal for the club. I think it's the right move at the right time. We can talk about the fee and whether it's enough, whether it's too much, whatever. But I don't know. I was just a little bit sad over the weekend seeing that goodbye. It wasn't meant to end like this, I don't think.
How was it going to end, though?
I think in an ideal world, I would have liked to see Maxi in the Champions League. I would have liked to try and see him, play close to a full season in this new team. But we know that doesn't happen too often. I don't know.
Geordie Tune for Life says it's a shame Maxi didn't get a chance to play Champions League football. It might have increased his value in the transfer market. And a lot of people have said that, for what Saint-Maximin did for this club. He deserved a final season European night in the light at St James's Park. But at the same time, we know Eddie Howe he doesn't leave room for sentiment. He will make the tough decisions. And again, I don't think this is as a tough a decision as some people maybe think it is. I think they know they've got to move players on to give them a bit more movement in the transfer market when it comes to incomings. They know there weren't too many takers for Allan Saint-Maximin. They know that actually, in reality, when you boil it all down, you strip it all back, is Allan Saint-Maximin part of Eddie Howe's first team plans? Is he guaranteed a place in that starting 11? The answer was no. Is he guaranteed to be the first name off the bench towards their last season? The answer was no. Even in games when Newcastle really could have done, you would think with that added injection of pace and trickery and excitement, often he wasn't the name turned to. I think it just makes sense. I don't think, for all Eddie Howe was saying about how he really wanted to keep Maxi. Yeah, you want to keep that weapon in your arsenal, but at the same time, is he going to be losing any sleep over it? I don't think so.
I don't think he will. But and ultimately, it goes back to the point that we've been making consistently every week for about 6 months. They don't have any sellable assets at all. Maxi was the only one of that sort of first team standing where you look at it and think, right, okay, they're going to be able to potentially get a good deal from. I mean, personally, I don't think they have got a good deal. I think they've been fleeced a little bit. And as you say, I think if it had been a Premier League team, even a European team in the Champions League, I think they would have had to pay a lot more.
But again, I asked the question, why hasn't there been even a European side? Because as much fun as he's going to have over in the Saudi Pro League, all due respect to the teams there, he would have had a lot of fun in Serie A, back in League One, going to leagues where players like Maxi, who when everything's going for them, is unplayable at the best of times. He would have had a field day in some of these leagues in Europe. So why hasn't anyone come knocking from Italy or France?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Is it the fee that's put them off, or the fee that they thought they would have to pay Newcastle? Is it that he's just not good enough? He doesn't stay fit enough? I'm surprised that a team in Europe hasn't taken a punt on him. I think you look at some of those Italy teams. I know AC Milan continue to blink. I know, when Conte was there, Tottenham were linked, but nothing was ever close. He was never really close to leaving until this summer. And what I will say, by the way, we were talking just a minute ago about Eddie Howe not losing any sleep. I don't know whether Eddie Howe was as determined to keep him as he made out in these interviews, because really Maxi didn't really seem to want to leave. It's been a tough goodbye to him. I think he would have loved to have played Champions League football. Yes, he's going to get absolutely crazy money in the Saudi Arabia League, which has no doubt swayed his decision. But I think Howe knew he really, really pushed behind the scenes to get Harvey Barnes, and I think he knew that meant Maxi was going to have to go.
He's a diplomat as well, Eddie, isn't he?
Yes.
You could cook him up the most horrendous meal and he'd still tell you it's a Michelin star style plate of food. Loads of people getting in the comments, so do keep your thoughts coming if you're watching live. If you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. If you're on Facebook, share the video to your newsfeed. And if you're listening on the podcast, we do appreciate you tuning in. Leave us a rating and review. We've got Al saying, I'm sad that Saint-Maximin is gone, but we need to look at the project and what is best for Newcastle for the future. And I think that pretty much sums up my thoughts. I think Al's hit the nail right on the head there.
Yeah, completely. Look, I know we've started this podcast off and I'm saying I'm sad. It's the right deal for the club. They had to move players on this summer. He was the only one they really could. I think they're getting a much better player in Barnes. I think they're getting a player that's vastly more suited to this Eddie Howe team. And yeah, I think, as I say, it would have just been nice to see him in the Champions League, or maybe end on a high rather than having that injury hit season.
Yeah, Maxi touched a lot of fans' hearts, says Geordie Tune for life, which is important to the community. He's a real honest, caring gentleman. I agree. Yeah, I mean, the work he did with the food bank, interaction with fans on social media and in person, absolutely brilliant to see. And that will be a big miss. Johnny says, anyone who is upset at Saint-Maximin going, it's because of what if. He never got the levels we all think he could. But how long do we give him? And I think that's absolutely key as well. This team can't afford to stand still. You can't afford to keep saying, well, tomorrow is another day.
Yeah.
Can you keep? And I kind of look at Callum Wilson, for example, and how many questions there were over his fitness record and what does this summer hold for him. He finished last season in a blaze of glory, on form, scoring goals. And I just asked the question of, if we were going to keep asking that question of Saint-Maximin, would he eventually step up? I'm not too sure he would.
He had countless opportunities, didn't he? He was never going to hit the heights we all thought he was. He didn't score enough goals. He wasn't consistent enough. He couldn't stay fit long enough. And I actually think it is maybe a little bit of a warning to the other players. It doesn't matter, how loved you are by the fan base. It doesn't matter how, well you're doing in house team now. If you fall off and the standards slip and you dip below the required form, you could be out because, as you say, this team isn't going to stand still.
And is it also a sign of what Eddie Howe actually looks for in a player? Now, as a fan, there's no greater sight seeing a player running a defender, turning back, little trick here or there. But it's not what Eddie Howe really wants. He wants end product. And you read the stats out before. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I remember looking at them the other day and thinking, goodness me, that's just not good enough.
Yeah, I mean, as me and you keep saying on this pod, his last goal was Wolves in August. You know what I mean? He doesn't do it enough. It was a great goal, but if we'd seen that every couple of weeks, fantastic. But we didn't, and I think what you're getting with Harvey Barnes is a player who's consistently scoring, double figures.
Well, he scored more goals last season than Allan Saint-Maximin scored in his Newcastle United career.
The minutes per goal are absolutely ridiculous. He's on every single attacking statistic. Barnes comes out on top, and I think yes, Maxi was flashy and he got you off your seat, and Newcastle fans love that. They loved those type of players like Ben Arfa and such. But you even saw towards the back end of Maxi's time at Newcastle how much it looked like he was trying to change his game to fit into Howe's system. And he never really looked comfortable.
And it was sad in many ways as well,
because Maxi, in a way, and I think, when he goes to Saudi, will just be able to go back to being that player that is actually really, really eye-catching. And he might actually probably score some goals in the Saudi league, but, it just didn't work for Newcastle towards the end.
Well, what did you make of his statement? And he's kind of hinted that he might be back at some point.
Yeah, what was it? It's not a goodbye, it's a see you soon or something. I thought it was, a little bit cryptic. That's just Maxi all over, isn't it? He does maybe like leave it open. And look, who knows? He goes and maybe has one or two good seasons in Saudi. Is there a chance? I think Newcastle fans would maybe welcome him back. He certainly hasn't burnt any bridges, I don't think.
He hasn't burnt any bridges, but I think when that opportunity arises, whether it be next summer or the summer after, I think Newcastle will be so far ahead and they would have just left Maxi well behind, and
he would need an incredible 2 years in Saudi, wouldn't he, to sort of
do you know what? Because with all due respect, again, a good year in the Saudi Pro League is how do you calculate that to the Premier League? But that's a discussion for another podcast. But I do also think, just harking back to what Eddie Howe likes, it's another sign of how hard you've got to work. You've got to be disciplined. And I know Saint-Maximin has his fans, people watching this and listening to this, you'll be huge fans of him. Look, I loved watching him play. But for me, he just didn't fit into Eddie Howe's side. And it's kind of like, you just got to cut your losses. I think the move's just right for both, because you're just going to end up resenting one another. Yeah,
I think, even though it hasn't maybe ended in the way Newcastle fans would have liked, it's a bit of a sort of, a slow balloon, it's a bit of a damp squib of an exit, but I think the time had come to move on. And as you say, Newcastle are only going to get, bigger and better. And I think already the business, I know they haven't done a lot of business this summer, but I think, the two deals that they brought in at the first team are looking good.
Al asks a very good question. He says, what is this sale of Saint-Maximin going to give us moving forward?
Look, I think, we can discuss the fee, all day long. 23 million. I think, the majority of Newcastle fans are going to think that's very much on the low side, but Newcastle had to sell. And yes, it isn't going to, completely balance the books, but it's going to give them now, wiggle room to try and get a few more deals done over the line. I think, even though it's a little bit quiet on the transfer front, I think we'll definitely see some movement in the next couple of weeks before that Villa game. And look, Maxi going, players like Darlow going, eventually Fraser, Hayden, Hendrick, it will free up a lot of wages as well on that bill. A lot of these players on sort of inflated Mike Ashley contracts, earning money that they should never have really been earning. So as you say, the financials might not look good on the face of it, but it's going to give Newcastle, a bit of room now to do some business.
And as well, they've sold Saint-Maximin with a plan in mind. They haven't just got this offer and gone, right, yep, we'll take the cash and then we'll think about what we're going to do after. That there's a plan there in paper. They will be looking at names, and they'll have ideas of how to replace Allan Saint-Maximin, because people will argue, well, Harvey Barnes is that, but people will also argue he's not, and they now need to bring in another attacking player to probably offset losing Maxi. But then is it a priority? And we'll get on to a bit more about transfers and where we think it's going to go in the next few weeks in a moment. Ellis Ridley says, I would understand if Maxi wanted to go, but it looks like he was reluctant to be leaving. As much as people think we're way past him, he deserved the chance to showcase for us in Europe after saving us. Now, this is a really interesting point, and I get it. And in an ideal world, he gets that opportunity. But
again, it's going back to that sentimental thing, isn't it?
There's no room for it in football at all, because, if he doesn't fit into Eddie Howe's plans, if he's not guaranteed a first team start, he's Newcastle's really he's Newcastle's sellable asset, because you don't want to sell Isak, Wilson, Bruno. He's really the only one that they're going to look to get rid of. Then he goes if the offer comes, and the offer's come and he's gone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as I keep saying, it would have been fantastic for him to end, with the Champions League season under his campaign. After all he did for us, dragging us through the, through the darkness all those years ago under Bruce. But, as you say, they in my opinion, have upgraded in that position. You've now also got the fact that we're talking about Elliot Anderson pushing his way in that first team, playing on that left-hand side. Anthony Gordon, we're all really, really excited to see him on in one of those three attacking positions come the start of the season. Howe's got options now, not just for Harvey Barnes, but for a couple of players in that position. So, as you said, it feels like the right move, doesn't it, for the club?
Definitely, yeah. Sam says, he's feeling robbed that Max only left for 23 million. Les says, we were all in love with Saint-Maximin's potential, but not the reality.
Yeah.
Artie says, I hope there's a low buyback clause, as the sale fee was relatively low. Most expected at least 30 million. Chris agrees there. He says he was worth at least 50 million. Paul says Maxi was inconsistent, injury prone. Harvey Barnes is perfect for Newcastle, and I can see him becoming a real fan's favourite. And again, it is the lack of consistency, which I do think has killed Maxi's time at Newcastle United. But he's gone. We wish him well. But for me, I'm not crying about it.
Yeah, right decision.
Others who have left this week: Carl Darlow to Leeds, Jamal Lewis to Watford. Let's start with Carl Darlow, great servant for Newcastle United, a good goalkeeper, never the best goalkeeper, but made some fantastic saves. He put out a nice highlight reel of some of the saves he made. I do feel like him and Jamal Lascelles, that deal way back when, 2014 was it?
Yes, yeah, about 10 years ago.
What was it, about 6 or 7 million, wasn't it? All in all,
for the two of them, yeah.
That's not a bad little deal. I'm gonna go out on record here. And I know Newcastle.
I know what you're gonna say.
Just bear with us. I know Newcastle signed Iosi Perez for a bag of peanuts, right? And that turned out to be fantastic. But Carl Darlow and Jamal Lascelles, does that rank as one of the best deals under Mike Ashley?
One of the best. I think the word you used off air this morning was the best, which I sort of shot you down for. But yeah, ultimately, look, 8 million for the two of them. We got a club captain and a total leader out of one of them. And actually, I think because Darlow's sort of fallen down the pecking order a bit in recent seasons, people actually forget how good he was back in the day. He had some fantastic runs of form in the Championship. There was a time when Dubravka got injured, and he stepped in at the start of the season and was really, really good. I think he's been a fantastic servant. But his exit was always nailed on this summer. He was one that was always going to go. And I think he's found a really good opportunity in Leeds. I think it's a really good move for him.
Do you foresee then Martin Dubravka must surely be staying now?
I think we're now probably looking at the goalkeeping department. I think this is probably going to be it. Pope, Dubravka, Karius and Gillespie. Karius is obviously going to stay. Definitely. Pope's definitely going to stay. Dubravka's the only one that's maybe wavering, but he's came out and said he wants to stay. I think Howe is more than happy for him to be back up. He's going to get plenty of minutes. I think this will be the final four now.
There we go. The other person to have gone, as we mentioned, Jamal Lewis, Watford on loan. And, if we talk about players who I really wish had reached the highs we expect them to, this chap is up there. I mean, I usually point to Sion Jejong, who obviously had some horrendous time with injuries. A collapsed lung. Now he lost his sight. He's the one I often say, I wish he just, reached the levels he could have done.
Mm-hmm.
Jamal Lewis is in that bracket as well, because Newcastle signed him. He'd had a fantastic season with Norwich. Liverpool wanted him. Everyone was very excited when Newcastle signed. It felt like a big statement. And then it just didn't work.
Yeah, really, really, really poor. I don't want to sugarcoat it. I think it has been a really, really poor move. I think for whatever reason, he just hasn't been able to stay fit. He's struggled for, consistency. Credit to Eddie Howe, by the way, because I think Howe has genuinely given him every opportunity to work his way back into this team. He could have sold him back in Jan. He could have got rid of him last summer. He didn't. He said, the work that Lewis was putting in off the pitch, made him sort of worthy of staying to fight for his place. But, I mean, without, being too harsh on the lad, he played those first pre-season games and just did not look at the level. Really, really struggled, I thought, against Gator in the first half when he was playing as a left winger. Didn't really do himself, many favours at Rangers. I think it was another one that was just inevitable this summer.
Really good opportunity though for him at Watford, and Watford have really good opportunity to nurture him and get him back to that left back, because maybe he was a one-hit wonder in the Premier League, but I've got no doubt that if he stays fit, he's an international footballer, for goodness sake. He'll have a really good season in the Championship if he can stay fit. But that is the key for him, staying fit.
Yeah, and look, this might just be what he needs. I think, even when he was fit in Newcastle, even though it wasn't too often, he was never going to get in that team last season over Dan Burn. Matt Targett has been, a very, very good deputy at that left-back spot. He was really going to struggle. Maybe, as you say, if he can keep himself fit and have a full season in the Championship under his belt, it might. I hope it does spark him back into life, because it's easy to forget how good he actually was at Norwich. Him on the left and Max Aaron's on the right. They were absolutely fantastic. So, again, wish him well. Burnt no bridges. Really, really hope he does well next season.
Kel Watts is the other one to have left out on loan, again could turn to a permanent move back to Wigan, isn't it? Yeah, I'm good about this one. I'm good, because a few years ago you were looking at him like he could have really stepped up and been a first team Newcastle United player by now, but injuries again have just absolutely rocked him, and it's such a shame. But I do feel like it's the right time for him to move on. He's not going to get ahead of anyone in this Newcastle United side. Even the likes of Remy Savage, Alex Murphy coming through. Kel Watts' boat's long sailed now, but he'll go to Wigan. I think he'll do well again if he keeps fit. There's no reason why he, in a few years' time, can't be part of a Championship winning side, and then he gets that opportunity in the Premier League.
Yeah, I hope so. It's a real shame, because this time last year, he got taken on the Austria pre-season trip. Botman had just came in. He was learning alongside him, and you thought, okay, how's going to give him a chance this season? And then, obviously, as you say, really, really unfortunate knee injury when he was out in Austria, which forced him to go on loan to Peterborough. I think for what Wigan and Peterborough and teams like that need, he's absolutely perfect. He's got experience of winning League One countless times. I think he's won it with both clubs. He's got many promotions under his belt. It's just a real shame it didn't work out for him. But I think, again, it's the right time. And I think, I know we're going to touch on the youngsters in a bit, but Alex Murphy has really came through and shown, how to take your chance at that level. And I think that was something that Watts maybe, there was all this promise, but we never really saw it in a Newcastle shirt. And I think ultimately that's maybe led to his exit.
Yeah. Best wishes to Kel, and hopefully his career can pick up. A lot of people in the comments asking about Isaac Hayden and Jeff Hendrick. What is happening with them? Again, Newcastle are just struggling to get these two off the books.
Yeah, real lack of takers for these, 3 or 4 players that they're trying to offload. I mean, Howe couldn't have made it any more clear that he was, getting rid of these players. They didn't get taken to America. They haven't even been training with the first team.
I've seen Hayden linked to a move to where Rafa Benitez is managing now.
Him and Manquillo both at Celta Vigo potentially.
Sorry, Rafa, if you're watching, hands off Manquillo. He's stopping. He's stopping.
Rafa, come and take them. Look, I think that'll be a very good deal for him. I mean, I know he's obviously he wanted to stay in the UK initially when he was going to leave a couple of years ago. Obviously, Newcastle managed to persuade him to stay. Could be just what he needs to revive his career. He's another one who, he's massively fallen off, really, really hampered by injuries, 2 bad knee injuries in the last 18 months. Such a shame as well, because I mean, we've been talking about likeable footballers, and Lewis and Maxi fit that bill, but Hayden was always such a a decent personality.
Again, though, he'll do someone a really good job in the championship.
I mean, I've actually seen, and I know this isn't going to happen, but I've actually seen a couple of people in our comments on this podcast on Twitter saying he could maybe do a job. And I mean, I don't think he will in this squad. I don't think Howe, sees him as a backup option, but I think there's still a little minority of fans that would like to see him stay. But I think the ship's long gone.
He's never going to get a place in the squad, though, is he?
Well, he didn't even get a place in the 25-man squad when he was fit. When Howe first came in. So yeah, a real shame. But as you say, it's proven tough for him, Hendrick, and Fraser for suitors, really.
Yeah, maybe have to take a bit of a pay cut to get out of Tyneside. Now, sticking with the talk of youngsters, we mentioned there Kel Watts. We've mentioned how well Alex Murphy did. Obviously, Elliot Anderson grabbing the headlines in America. Lewis Miley just looks, goodness me, what a player this kid looks.
Looks ready to step into the first team, doesn't he?
Eddie Howe, Dan Ashworth, they must just be rubbing their hands at the options they've got coming through. Ben Parkinson, Turner Cook as well. But the three who really stood out, Lewis Miley, Elliot Anderson, Alex Murphy.
Yeah.
And now, if those three ended up in the first team squad for that Villa game, I wouldn't be disappointed nor surprised.
I don't think any of them will miss out. I think Alex Murphy's the funny one, because he hasn't really been in and around that first team like Miley has. Yes, he's been training with them, but very rarely in a match day squad. He hasn't actually played a senior game for them, and he's just slotted in. He can play at left back, he can play at centre back. Really, really good. Looks very good on the ball, comfortable passing it. Really, really excited by him, and I think it just goes to show why Dan Ashworth last summer, when he first got his hands on the sort of transfer key, and said, I really want to put a lot of emphasis on the youth team. Murphy's the only one that's really came through that so far. I'm sure there'll be others to follow. Miley, I mean, he just looks so good. He looks like he's been playing the game for 10, 15 years.
He's quick, isn't he?
He's quick. Yeah. His positioning. He's going up against some real senior players, and he's just not put a foot wrong. I mean, Chelsea spent 105 million on Enzo Fernandez, and Lewis Miley had him in his back pocket last week in America. And I just think, and I know, of course, Anderson is rightly taking the headlines. I think if he can continue this form in front of goal, what an option he's going to be. Another one who's really versatile position-wise. Looks like he's bulked out. He looks fitter. He looks smarter. Really, really excited. I think we now need to be talking about, does he take someone's place in the starting lineup?
Yeah, I think he does. I think someone has to have a really good Saturday or Sunday in the Salah Cup to oust Elliot Anderson from the starting 11 for Aston Villa.
Yeah, it's really interesting, because you've got, if Elliot Anderson starts on the bench against Aston Villa, he can feel really disappointed. Anthony Gordon, the form he's in, by the way, could feel really disappointed. Harvey Barnes, he's nowhere near match fit, and he looked really, really good. Thought he was very, very sharp against Brighton. Joelinton, where does he play? Isaac, Wilson. I mean, you've now got so many options in different positions. We haven't even spoken about, Longstaff and Willock trying to get back in the team. It's what a set of options Howe's got for the first couple of weeks.
Alan says, looking at Miley, he could be the next Bellingham, so mature for someone so young. David says, Elliot Anderson starts the season for me, but where?
Yeah,
that's the key question. He's got to start in the centre. He has to.
Reckon?
Yeah, I think he looks best in that centre for me.
Yeah,
alongside Bruno, and then it's the question: is it Joelinton? Is it Tonali? For me, it would be Joelinton and Bruno, and then Anderson, and then on the left you would have Harvey Barnes or Anthony Gordon.
Yeah, I think Tonali's maybe just going to need a couple of weeks to get up to speed. I think. He didn't disgrace himself in pre-season so far, but I think, there's a couple of times he looks like he's just maybe, getting used to English football. I don't know. I like Anderson out wide, but I like him in the centre. I think he can play him anyway. I think if you ask him, though, I think he's going to be want to be further up the pitch.
Loads of people in the comments here. The Zeg says Bruno, Joelinton and Anderson start for them. Tonali needs a bit of time. So you've got someone agreeing with you there, and doesn't always happen. Nantha says all the youngsters are looking promising. We've just got loads of people just really excited. Sean says, I love Anderson and Miley, so calm on the ball. They don't panic. I will still say we need a left back and a right back, but I think House and Ashby is the ideal right back. So glad Howe is giving the youngsters a chance, and Savage looks great on the ball too. Yes, and Remy Savage, once of Liverpool, persuaded to come to Newcastle, and yeah, maybe a shock kind of inclusion to the US tour. He is the older man of the group that appeared against Brighton, because there was a celebration picture and there was 6 players in it. There was Miley, there was the other Miley, Anderson, Parkinson, Turner Cook, Murphy, and then Savage. And Savage is the older one of all of them. But Sean's right there. He didn't look out of place for me, Savage.
Yeah, he obviously started against Gateshead in that first game alongside Burnett at centre back, and obviously, Newcastle found themselves 2 down at half time. And I thought Savage really looked off the pace, and I thought, such a shame, because he's finally waited for this chance in the first team. He's got it, and he looked like he struggled against Gateshead, but when he played in America, I thought he looked good. I think he's looked sharper. He's getting to grips with the team. I think he's still probably got a little bit of way to go to get above Murphy in the pecking order, but as Sean said there, I thought all the youngsters have looked really, really promising in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, long may it continue. JB says Tonali, Anderson, and Miley to start. That's a big call. Paul says Anderson could play as a number 10 off Isaac. I don't think that's going to happen. I can't see it. Yeah,
would mean a system change, wouldn't it? But
yeah, it's definitely not going to happen. David says Bruno has looked leggy, but that's the pitfalls of pre-season. I'm sure when the whistle goes at 5:30 on the Saturday against Villa, he'll be up to it. Baz says Anderson has been in the gym, and me and Gibbo spoke about this on the episode Let's Talk About Elliot Anderson, where we mentioned the hard work that he has put in, and he looks like he's bulked up.
Yeah,
and he's just seized the opportunity. I think he's well aware of what's in front of him. He's well aware of the short amount of time that these youngsters have got. And actually, there's no doubt in that the likes of Lewis Miley, Alex Murphy are also very aware that time is not really on their side in the grand scheme of things. Your opportunity's now. You know what I mean? You have to take it when you've got this opportunity. Anderson's taken it, and it's going to pay off, because, again, he starts against Aston Villa.
Do you reckon?
He does, yeah.
Yeah,
do you want to put Nando's on it?
I don't. Maybe a meal deal this time. Look, I think Anderson is perfect proof that you can go out on loan and then stay around the first team. And he's had to be very, very patient, because even after he sort of had that fantastic game against Forest in April, he then had to, really fight for minutes. He probably didn't get as many minutes as he would have liked. I think Hal would probably agree to that. He's absolutely grabbed this chance with both hands in pre-season. I'm really, really excited by him.
And that's the thing I like, though, the fact that he didn't get the minutes everyone was expecting him to, but he doesn't kick off. Nope. He just gets on with it, knuckle down hard, right attitude, takes the moments that come his way, then gone away off season in the gym, working hard, then bang, here we are, Gateshead, over to America, scoring goals. Now, Paul makes a point here. John Dal Thomason scored goals for fun in pre-season, and he couldn't hit a barn door. What I will do is defend John Dal Thomason, because remember, Shearer got injured, and John Dal Thomason then became the out-and-out striker, which he wasn't brought in to do. So I'm going to defend him, Paul, but I get the point you're making. And yes, that's the other side of the coin, isn't it? That we are bigging up Elliot Anderson, we're bigging up Lewis Miley, those two more than anyone else. But we have to be careful. They are youngsters. They are playing for Newcastle United. It's great that they've got this potential, and it's great that we're saying, yes, he starts against Aston Villa. Yes, Miley might do. We wouldn't be disappointed if he did do. However, there has to be a bit of perspective and realism just added in, just to temper expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just laughing at myself, because I remember, me and Johnny Green were on this podcast 2 weeks ago going, you can't read too much into pre-season, let's just not, jump the gun about the going 2-0 down at Rangers and stuff like that. But, at Gateshead, but, when I was here 2 weeks talking about how all these players are now walking at the first team, you're right in a sense that you can't look too far into it. But what this pre-season will do for all these youngsters and fill them with confidence. And Elliot Anderson, yes, he's only scoring goals in pre-season, but 4 goals in 4 games. He said after the Gateshead game when we spoke to him, he needs to add more goals to his game. He's done just that. Now I hope he just gets the chance to do it in the Prem.
Yeah. You've
Hope
got
he gets the minutes.
You've got to go with the sharpest players at the start of the season, says the Zig, which again I think that alludes to the fact that they'd like to see Anderson starting. Ellis says, I hope Anderson is at least playing every domestic cup game. Again, I think he'll get much more than that. Ian says, who would you drop for Lewis Smiley? Well, what I meant by that point was that if he did start, I wouldn't be disappointed. I don't think he will start. I think, like I said, I think it'll be Anderson, Bruno, and Joelinton.
But I think we're going to see him starting a lot of games, I think, in the cup
In the
competitions.
cups, yeah,
I think,
definitely.
And look, he's doing absolutely nothing wrong. He's really, really excelling when he's coming off the bench, slotting into these games effortlessly. I think it's too soon to be talking about him starting in the Premier League, but I think he's certainly on the right track.
100%. It's just exciting to be able to talk about these players.
Yeah, finally.
Newcastle United have announced the strategic relationship with Irish Premiership champions Lawn Football Club that will see the clubs collaborate, and the players will go one way and the other. So it's a good opportunity for Newcastle's youngsters to get some first team football, and of course, if Lawn produce any world stars, Newcastle United look like they're going to have first dabs. Important that these relationships get set up. You expect Newcastle are going to have several of these as the years go on.
Yeah.
But really important that they're not just any club. They're clubs with a bit of pedigree, who are going really well in their respective leagues.
Yeah, look, I think it was really interesting when that Lawn announcement came out last week. I think if you look at the club, it's easy to see why they've done it. Put a lot of time and effort and finances into the academy. They do the same with the women's team, which I'm sure played a big factor. And as you say, you just got to look at some of the players they've signed from across the UK in the last 12 months. Alex Murphy being one of them, Jude Smith, Charlie MacArthur from Scotland. They're putting a real, effort in to try and sign these players. And I think if they can, as you say, more of these collaborations will come with these clubs. We've seen in the last couple of weeks they're signing really, really highly rated talent from a couple of teams across the UK. The future is going to be bright. We're going to be talking about more of these youngsters coming through in the years to come, and that's exactly what Dan Ashworth wants. He wants to save Eddie Howe or Newcastle money in the long run, and this is the way to do it.
Definitely. They've signed 3 youngsters as well, haven't they, this week?
Yeah.
You got the names off the top of your head?
They've signed a young 14-year-old called Michael Mills from Port Vale, I want to say. They've signed Casey Woodley, something like that, from Southend, and a 16-year-old, really highly rated. And another one, Sam Alibi from Oldham. Again, going to go at the under 15s and 16s. They're really keen to try and get a deal done for Wolves right back Leo Shahar, 16 years old, represented England at youth level. So, this isn't even going to be players that are playing in the under 21s next year. This is players that are going to go into the, the under 15s and the under 16s. It just goes to show, and some of these deals they're doing are, they're not cheap, hundreds of thousands of pounds to bring these players in. It's just fantastic to see that they're actually, focused on the academy as well as the first team.
Building for the future, and just showing as well with the likes of Elliot Anderson and Lewis Smiley that there's a pathway there which wasn't always there. But as Aaron's mentioned there, relying on Dan Ashworth, who's got plenty of history and just a brilliant track record in doing this sort of thing at Brighton. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it progresses. Harrison Ashby impressed a lot of people in the United States, but he looks like he's set to go to Swansea. I don't know if I would have kept him. I mean, I think he would benefit from a loan deal. And we mentioned this, didn't we? Was it last month, 6 weeks ago? We did the video about right backs. He has been impressive in the moments he's got in pre-season. I think if he's guaranteed first team football, then it's the right deal. Of course, loan deals these days, you never get that kind of clause. But if he's sitting on the bench in a few weeks' time and he's not getting a game week in, week out, then it's an absolute pointless business transaction. But hopefully, when he does go off to Swansea, he'll get the minutes to help him develop his career a little bit further.
Yeah, he's looked really good the last couple of games. I thought, he's very, very good at Rangers. Obviously, when he scored the winner, I thought he's best player on the pitch in the first half.
What was he doing up there?
Oh, I know, yeah, for the winner.
What's that? I just couldn't
90th
think.
minute as well, just going for broke. I thought he was really good against Brighton on Friday in that first half. Him and Barnes were the two that really stood out in what was, quite a poor first half for Newcastle. He's looked really good. I think he's played himself at contention. I think it's quite telling that he's going on loan. I think, given, we're looking at Newcastle's right back situation, they've got Trippier. Everybody would probably agree that Ashby's second choice. if that doesn't tell you that they're confident of getting a right back in, I think nothing will.
And that right back, Tino Livramento. I mean, this chase has been going on forever and ever. It'll get done. I think Southampton will have to bring down their price tag as the window goes on, but obviously they're very confident that they can persuade these players to stop and get back up into the Premier League. But I think it'll come down to Livramento as well, applying a little bit of pressure and realizing as well. I mean, how many times does this kind of opportunity come along? That being said, maybe in his head, he's thinking, well, I'm not going to be first choice. I also realize I've had a really bad injury and I'm going to have to work back to get back to that level in which I was being talked about as an England international. And I just wonder maybe whether that plays a little part in his thinking, why he's not actually applying pressure in this situation.
Look, I think he's got a very, very good relationship with Russell Martin, the new Southampton manager, who's really laying it on thick in the press to try and, say that he wants him to stay. I think what you've also got to remember with Livramento is he sort of burst onto the scene at Chelsea and was really, really highly rated. He was impressing for England at youth level. And he actually said to Chelsea, I'm very, very grateful for what you've done for my career, but if I'm not going to get first team football, I want to go elsewhere. And he moved to Southampton for, pennies, really, when you think of how good he was when he first burst onto the scene. Yes, they've gone down, and yes, Championship football isn't maybe that glamorous, but I think the reason we haven't seen him really come out and push for the move is because he knows Southampton have really helped his career. He had a very bad injury, which they helped him through. But I think the fact that, Harrison Ashby's so close to leaving on loan, plus the fact that Southampton are now going after Max Aarons, who would, probably instantly walk into that team, I think we'll start to see some movement on it the next couple of days. And I hope so as well. I think it'll be a very good signing. Yeah,
me too. I think it'll be an excellent signing. But Rana makes a good point here. Why not back Ashby over at Livramento?
Look, I think they see Tino Livramento as a real long-term replacement for Kieran Trippier. If he can find anywhere near the form he had before that knee injury, he's the absolute tailor-made perfect. He's probably the, a future England right back at a major tournament. He's that good. Yes, Harrison Ashby's look good, and I think, they definitely see a good future for him as well. But I think if Livramento wants to come and Southampton want to sell, I think it's a deal that Newcastle know, they'd be stupid not to do.
Going to be one to follow, but it has dragged on for a long time. As Brian has said here in the comments, Southampton have played funny for too long, ruined it for Tino. We should go elsewhere. But then the question is, if they go elsewhere, where are they going to?
Look, we're saying that it's dragged on for a while, but has it really? What, 2-3 weeks?
It's been longer than that, surely.
I don't know. I just think if a deal's worth doing, and yes, Southampton have stood very firm so far, but I think there's a deal there to be done. I think when Championship clubs that have just gone down are, rejecting 30-odd million, I think, there's only so much that can hold in the modern game. They need to be recouping cash, especially if they're going out and buying Max Aarons, who will not be cheap from Norwich either. So I don't know. I think, look, there's still a month left. I've got no issue with it dragging on. I know this isn't Newcastle style. They like to get it, in and out and done very quickly, as we've seen with other deals. But I think this one's worth sticking with. As Johnny says, yeah, he generally could be world class in the future if that knee injury hasn't hampered him too much.
Yeah, and as Ian says as well, Botman dragged on for a year.
True.
But yeah, I mean, I think this deal will get done. I think, as I said there, Southampton are just going to have to lower the price. And I think they'll have to do that with James Ward-Prowse, who's been priced out of a move, and Lever as well, who Liverpool would like. I in many ways, I applaud Southampton for not selling on the cheap and holding out for the best price, because often, what you do get is Premier League teams coming down and picking up the very best talent for pennies, where Southampton have said, do you know what? We don't need to sell these players. They're not pushing to go. So why should we give you our best players for next to nothing? So I applaud that. I do think it'll happen. I think it's just a waiting game and patience.
Yeah, same. I think it will. I think it's edging close. I think Newcastle have proven that, even though they've been knocked back 2 or 3 times, it hasn't put them off. I hope it gets done. I really do. I think it's a good deal.
We've got some questions over on Twitter. We've got Ian says, with the added competition in midfield, with the signing of Tonali and the impressive pre-seasons of Anderson and Lewis Miley, what would be your midfield for the Villa games? We've already kind of said that. Should we just remind our listeners? So for me, barring an absolute stormer by someone else at the Cellar Cup, I'd play Anderson, Bruno, and Jolinton.
I think I'll be boring and go with you on that. I think there's no doubt in the future Tonali will be an out and out starter in this team. I just think he's maybe just getting up to speed. And I think Anderson's really taking his chance. So that'll be my 3 as well.
Keeping with the midfield, go on.
But I was just about to say, just as a little extra on that, I'm really looking forward to Sean Longstaff coming back.
Well, that's the next question.
No,
you must have sensed it. Roger says, based on the preseason matches, does it highlight that Longstaff is critical to be in the team as neither Tonali or Bruno are the answer as a defensive midfielder? If so, is there a possibility that it will be Bruno or Tonali, but not both in a starting midfield? And I have to say, especially the Villa game, the gap in the midfield, it's still keeping me awake. It's not the newborn, it is the gaps in that midfield. And the defence, I mean, Sean Longstaff is definitely an option. Potentially you go out and sign, dare I say, Tyler Adams, although I know he's injured. Had to get it in there. But yeah, the question about the defensive midfield?
I think, funny enough, it reminded the Villa game in the USA reminded me a lot of the Villa game at Villa Park when Villa won 3-0 at the back end of the season. Longstaff was missing that day, and you could really tell that Newcastle was struggling to get a grip on the game. And I think at times in America it was the same. Even against Chelsea, there was times where the midfield it was just so easy to slice through them. As we're saying, it's pre-season, players aren't fully fit. Bruno's arrived back late. Tonali's getting up to speed. Longstaff and Willock both out. I think it just goes to prove he's vital to this team. And I'm really looking forward to coming back. I hope this injury doesn't keep him out for too much longer.
How long do we think he's going to be out for? I mean, he's not going to be available for that Villa game. And then even if he's back in training, he's still going to be weeks off the pace, isn't he?
I think it's a slight hamstring injury. So I think we probably won't see him in the next couple of weeks. Hopefully it's not too bad. But yeah, hopefully soon for him.
People asking about my selection there for Villa, so who plays the defensive role, says to Conor Fraser. Well, I think you put Bruno in that role just for that game. I think with Tonali and Bruno, I don't know whether, obviously it was a bit of an experiment over in the United States, and whether there was a bit of miscommunication and what have you. And obviously that gets ironed out as time goes on. But I think if you're just playing Bruno, Jolinton and Anderson, I think Bruno will then know his role. Whereas when you're playing a preseason game and you're trying things out, that's exactly what you're doing. You're trying things out and you're not maybe as regimental and rigid as you would be in an actual competitive game.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, as we've said, it's preseason. It was very early in the game where Villa were absolutely dominating that midfield, and Newcastle did, really pull it around as the game went on. They grew into it. The midfield looked a lot more, shored up. I think Bruno starts as a defensive midfielder. If you were to ask Eddie Howe now, but I think it's good that you've got an option where Tonali can play in a couple of those midfield positions as well.
Paul says Tonali doesn't look ready to start for me. He's going to get eased in. I think Bruno, Tonali, Big Joe is pretty much nailed on, says Ian. Do you think Bruno and Tonali could be the new Gerrard and Lampard and can't play together, says Leon. We'll have to wait and see on that one. Yeah, too soon to pass judgments. Mark says Tonali has been no worse than Bruno, who has been way off. A lot of people have commented on Bruno, but I think, again, compared to football, he'll step right up. Paul says, I think Tonali will come into his own in the Champions League game. I predict that he won't start against Villa. And Sean says, we have a strong midfield. I think now Anderson, Bruno and Jolinton would be my choice. I think Tonali needs more time to catch up. Eric asks, which player surprised you the most this pre-season? For me, Lewis Miley.
Yeah, but also Elliot Anderson, just because I didn't think he had those goals in his locker. But yeah, Miley surprised me at how comfortably looked against the bigger teams.
Phil says, with Man United set to sign a massive kit deal with Adidas, reportedly worth £900 million over 10 years. Yeah. Do Newcastle United bite the bullet and buy out Castor?
Funny enough, I am planning to write a piece on this, tomorrow. After seeing that deal, I mean, this Man United deal, for people who don't know, who are listening and watching, they've signed a new 10-year deal with Adidas, 900 million, 90 million a season, biggest one in Premier League history. And you compare that to Newcastle's kit deal where Castor, it's £6.5 million a year. 60 million for 10 years, that would get them. So it goes to show again, that sort of the gulf distance Newcastle still need to go, to get these sort of commercial and revenue streams up to where the other big 6 teams are. I think we'll soon be seeing the end of Newcastle, and I think
how long is the deal run? Do we know that? We don't know exactly, do we?
I think within the next 2 seasons we'll see another kit manufacturer, and I think it'll be Adidas.
You think it will be?
Yeah.
The dream will become a reality?
Yeah, I think it will. I think you've only got to look at what the some of the links that some of these new Newcastle board members have got with Arsenal. Darren Eales did a lot with them in Atlanta. Peter Silverson, was the man who pretty much brokered the Adidas kit deal. I think it's only a matter of time.
Shows you though just how far Newcastle have got to go, doesn't it, in terms of revenue, and then laying the groundwork with the people they appointed. I mean, going to America helps. You're laying the foundations there. You're getting your name out into maybe an audience where it wouldn't necessarily be, into a market. So it's all about the long-term aim, and I think it will end up paying off. Transfers then. Where next for Newcastle United? Is it Livramento? Is there someone else waiting in the wings? We've got Adam saying, how many signings can you realistically see Newcastle United making? Any big surprise incomings? Do you feel, well, then he asked about Livramento, but we'll get the first two out of the way first. I mean, I still think 2 will come through the door.
Yeah, I think 2, maybe 3, but 2 I think is probably more likely.
Big names, I'm not too sure. But then Newcastle don't sign big names; they sign the right player.
Yeah, look, I don't think we're going to see a marquee signing or an outlay like we saw with Tonali again. But I think there's still money to be spent. Maxi's certainly freed some of that up, and I think just on the second part of this question about surprises, this new look Newcastle United are full of surprises, and it wouldn't surprise me, especially given how quiet it is and how nothing is being leaked out of that club at the minute.
Well, we speak about this room. It is really quiet. Like the silence is deafening.
But I think that's really telling of how they're going to work now. I think back in the day under Bruce, it was just leaks galore. I think whether it was transfers or training ground bust-ups, whereas now they've completely battened down the hatches. And look, fans want to know who's coming in. Us as journalists, we're always trying to find out where they're going next. But they're major players now, and they really, really want to try and keep it to themselves.
Frustrating, though, isn't it?
But look, we saw. I mean, look what happened with when they were linked with Barella earlier in the window, and then all of a sudden you had, well, if Newcastle are going to go from Liverpool and Chelsea are going to go to them, they do not want to alert other clubs that they're in the market for some of these players and that they're potentially going to get a deal, because they know City or Man United or Arsenal or Liverpool could easily gazump them if they wanted to.
I think the loan market's going to be key as well. I think we'll see 2 permanent signings, and I think we'll see a loan deal. I still think Calvin Phillips is a possibility if he doesn't get what he wants at Manchester City.
I can't see it personally. If I'm honest, I think I see a lot of people talking about the loan market and how Newcastle should utilise it, and how it gets asked about it all the time. When you look at Brighton's track record under Ashworth, they very, very rarely did loan deals unless there was sort of a mandatory clause in the end of it. And I just think we're yet to really see Newcastle do that, apart from Matt Targett, really. So maybe if there is a deal to be like that to be done, it will be. But I'm not too sure, how imminent another loan is.
People asking about the documentary, comes out very soon. The trailer looks absolutely excellent. Excited for that one?
Yeah, I really am. Thought the trailer was great. As I tweeted, I just want to see all those Eddie Howe team talks. I just want to see what he's like behind closed doors. But yeah, it'll be really, really good. I'm really looking forward to it next month.
Yeah, I'm sure Amazon might have record viewing figures for that one. A lot of people asking about Bruno's contract. Now, he was asked about it, and he used the word doubt. And I wonder whether obviously he says the word doubt. There's not that needs to be translated, but I wonder whether he didn't actually mean to say the word doubt, if you get what I mean.
I think it was a case of him saying, I don't think it was him saying that there was any doubt in his mind that he's going to stay, or that there was, doubt it was going to get answered. I think he just meant that there was a little bit of uncertainty as to, where the contract was coming. We know there was talks earlier this year. They didn't actually lead to a new deal, but we're expecting them to recommence in the next couple of weeks. I don't think it's I think he'll sign a new deal. He wants to stay. I want him to stay. The fans want him to stay. I can't see him going.
Yeah, I think that'll happen. It's just a case of everyone getting on the table again and getting it sorted. shall we finish with a bit of trivia?
Go on then.
Before we do, we are hosting another live event at the Tyneside Irish Centre on August the 30th, which is a Wednesday. It's going to be a transfer window special. Aaron will be on the panel with myself, Lee Ryder, Kieran Kelly, BBC Newcastle's Matthew Raisbeck, and Henry Winter of the Times. Perfect opportunity to come and talk about all things Newcastle United. We have obviously the Champions League draw the day after. We have the transfer window closing that weekend, and the Premier League season will be underway as well. We could be talking about Newcastle top of the Premier League. The link to buy tickets is in the comments right now. I'll pop it in again here. It'll be in the podcast description. We're donating to the Sir Boy Robinson Foundation and the Newcastle United Fans Food Bank as well. So do grab your ticket. Do come along. We love to see you guys in person. Right. Are you ready for some trivia?
I am.
So obviously, Caldalo has moved to Leeds United. So I've got players who've played for both. It's a starting 11 that I found on the Leeds United website. So slightly weighted towards Leeds United. So goalkeeper-wise, we'll go with Caldalo. Then into the defence, I'm going to say the ones that you'll just not get because I don't want to embarrass you. Okay. So we have Peter Haddock, Newcastle United Academy graduate. Peter Haddock joined Leeds from the Magpies for a fee of $45,000 in July 1986.
I would have got that one, I think.
When you got that one?
Of course I would.
Nicknamed the Fish.
Mm.
So defence, we have a person who was part of the Leeds United 1997 FA Youth Cup winning side. He made 142 appearances for Leeds. He then played 37 times for Newcastle United before making a move to Europe.
Centre back. Is that where he is?
A few people have got it in the comments already.
Johnny Woodgate.
Jonathan Woodgate.
Jesus, yeah.
His partner in this starting 11, Republic of Ireland International, 503 senior appearances over a course of an 18-year career. Spent 4.5 seasons with Newcastle between 2001 and 2005 and featured in the Champions League before moving to Leeds United. We're going to make 34 championship appearances for the Whites.
Another centre back.
I think this is a 4-4-2 formation. Or is it? Maybe not.
01-05 at Newcastle, then he went to Leeds in the Championship. I'm struggling here. Is it an obvious one?
It's an obvious one. The silence is no good for this podcast.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm really struggling here.
Andy O'Brien.
No, I wouldn't have got that. I didn't actually know he went to Leeds after, to be fair.
Into midfield then, born and bred at Leeds, Champions League and Premier League winning star, began his career in Yorkshire before moving to Newcastle United. He's moved again this summer. James Milner. Sticking in midfield, second division and first division champion with Blackburn. Obviously with Leeds, moved to Newcastle.
David
Batty. Again, stick with midfield. Arguably one of the finest midfielders to ever wear the Newcastle United shirt.
Gary Speed.
Look at that. Didn't have to go any further than that. Sticking with midfield again. I mean, there's a lot of midfielders in the starting 11. Made 265 appearances and netted 55 goals for Leeds between 96 and 2003. He moved to Newcastle under Sir Boy Robson. Played 98 times and scored 11 goals. I think he then moved to West Ham.
Read out those Leeds stats again and the time.
Made 265 appearances and netted 55 times for Leeds between 96 and 2003 and was voted Leeds United's Player of the Year twice in 98, 99 and 2000 and 2001. Featured in United's UEFA Cup and Champions League campaigns in the early noughties and eventually joined Newcastle United in 2004 under the management of Sir Boy Robson.
Lee Bowyer
it is. Midfield / striker, born in Rothwell. Not very popular with Leeds United fans anymore. Went on to feature 228 games and net 56 times for Leeds. Joined Newcastle in the summer of 2000, where he would face relegation from the Premier League. Thanks for reminding us about that, Leeds United. But also an immediate return to the top flight after securing the championship title.
Alan Smith.
Yes, and two up top, an Aussie. Probably what I need to say about that. And then someone who was on loan for Newcastle United, In 2004, made just 6 appearances under Sir Bobby Robson. He was signed by Leeds from Sunderland and really should have had an absolute stellar career, but injuries just wrecked him. Now over in Australia, I believe he's a pundit, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I'm not sure.
Michael Bridges.
Yeah, good shout. Yeah, I think he's a pundit over there now.
You're going to have to improve on this trivia. That was a push.
Right. That was 50-60%, I think, there.
I don't know. Guys, let us know in the comments what you think of Aaron's poor attempt. No, I'm trying to persuade you. His poor attempt at trivia. This has been the Everything is Black and White podcast. Thank you very much to you guys for tuning in, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, or through the podcast app, whichever platform you're listening to or watching on. Hit the subscribe button, hit the follow button, and share the content. We really do appreciate it. Me and Aaron will be back throughout the week over on the YouTube channel, where you'll see kind of exclusive videos that you won't have on the podcast channel. We do hope you can join us. I've got an unboxing video. I've bought a mystery Newcastle United box, and I'm going to unbox it on YouTube. God knows what's in it. That's the content you need, isn't it?
That's the commitment you're going to for that YouTube channel.
So watch out for that one. But yeah, head over to chroniclelive.co.uk for all the latest Newcastle United news. And from myself and Aaron, thank you very much once again, and we'll see you guys very soon.